Hello everyone, it's Thursday. So back in 2017, I put together a series where Dana and I talked about some of our favorite things, ranging from movies to college memories to songs. In one episode where we talked about some of our favorite cities that we visited, I mentioned that I had an experience in Terre Haute, Indiana, but I decided to not share that story at that time. Well, in the last week, I was really thinking about this story. I don't really know why. And I feel like now is the time for me to share the Terre Haute, Indiana story with you all. So first, I need to set up a little bit of context. So this took place during my spring break in April of 2017. I had taken a short 3-ish day trip to southern Indiana, and this happened right at the very end of the trip. I had been staying in the city of Bloomington, Indiana, which is southwest of Indianapolis, focusing my time on a short line regional railroad that runs through that area. Now, CSX, one of the major East Coast railroads, does have a line kind of close to Bloomington that runs to Evansville, but the majority of my time during this trip was spent on the regional railroad. Now, on the last day of the trip, I stopped very briefly in Terre Haute. There's a junction in town where the CSX line that goes south to Evansville intersects with a line that goes east toward Indianapolis, and then it goes west into Illinois, and the line from Evansville goes north, eventually getting to Chicago. I stopped at a crossing right near where the junction is, where the two lines kind of separate, one heading south, one heading east, and I did manage to see one train on that line to Evansville. So now a little while later, I hear another train on the line that goes to Indianapolis. Now this particular crossing that I was at wasn't set up in a way that was great to photograph a train on this line. There was another crossing about 100 to 300 yards to the east that I decided to go and check out. Now as I start driving away from this crossing, there was a red Saturn SUV that was sitting in a driveway very close to this crossing that started following me. At one point, it came so close to the backside of me that I almost backed into him. So I got to the crossing, it was very close, like it felt like seconds before the train actually showed up. And as I'm getting all my gear out of the car and setting up, this red Saturn SUV pulls up next to me, and the gentleman inside rolls his window down. He had glasses, he had a hat, and a very tiny dog, and he asks, "What are you doing?" So I tell him what I tell most anybody when I'm out doing these things, that I'm here to watch trains. And he looks right at me and he says, "The last guy that told me that broke into my house." So by now, the train is at the crossing that I had just came from. This gentleman then informs me that he has called the police, and if they show up, I should know why. So he drives off, I get the train, and then I go back to my car. A short time later, maybe 5 to 7 minutes or so, there's another train that shows up and starts going over the crossing. As this train is going by, I just happen to look back in the direction that I had came from, and I see a police car retracing the route that I drove over to where I am. So he eventually makes his way over to me and then motions for me to approach his vehicle. I pretty much tell him that I'm from Ohio, I'm just passing through to watch trains, and that I will be leaving within the hour. He then took one glance around the area, kind of like this, and said, "You're fine," and then drove off right as the train finished clearing the crossing. So I go back to my car and I sit down. Now, no sooner do I do that than another gentleman, much younger, with a beard, I think, comes up to my passenger side window and asks me, "What did that cop want?" I, again, explained why I was there, shared my train YouTube channel with him, and then he was on his way. He was actually a really nice guy, was actually really interested in what I was doing, so that was kind of neat. Now, normally the story would end there, but it doesn't, because another few minutes later, the red Saturn SUV shows up again, coming back toward me the same way that he had left. He turned around in the road and pulled up next to me, and then asks me if the police had shown up. When I had said yes, his demeanor toward me suddenly changed. I was no longer a threat to him, and he was actually a pretty nice guy. So after he left, I got one more train at that crossing before I headed for home. Now, I don't tell this story very often because there are a lot of moving parts to it, and me being a detail-oriented person wants to include as much of them as I am able to. Now, I could also tell that just from sitting at this crossing for the short amount of time that I was there, I could tell that I probably wasn't in the best section of town. There was a moment when I was sitting at the crossing between when the cop left and when the red Saturn showed up again, where there was a group of like 3 young-ish males that were walking on the other side of the road, and a guy on a bicycle had gone by my car. And one of them just started shouting like all these obscenities at the guy on the bicycle, to the point where he's standing in the middle of the road, in the middle of the crossing. and the other two are just telling him to come back and to let it go. I haven't had anything happen to me that was more involved than this story yet. I don't like saying yet, but there's always a chance something else could happen. But I do hope that you found it entertaining. Thank you all for watching. God bless, and I'll see you all next time.